In a preliminary election September 26th, Boston voters can choose among 4 candidates for mayor. Our guest is one of 3 challengers appearing on the ballot. We'd like to welcome a former member of the Boston School Committee and Boston Police Department, Bob Cappucci. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
Good to have you.
Thank you, sir.
It's been a while since you're on the school committee. Tell the voters, looking back on your experience, what things would you like them to know about to make you a good candidate for mayor?
Well, as far as I believe your question is alluding to the Boston school system, is that basically I have learned from experience that when Roosevelt, I forget, Mark Roosevelt, who was the person, the state representative from Beacon Hill at the time, that said there should be an appointed school committee, and I wasn't quite happy with that. We were the oldest school committee in America.
And you were elected.
Correct, but I have to say it was a good move. I would now concur that Mark was correct and not myself. I think it should be an appointed board. Many reasons, one of which there clearly was an awful lot of politicking going on, and that's not something that I'm comfortable with. The students have to come first, not the politics.
What about your experience on the police department?
That was certainly an eye-opener. I've always worked the midnight shift, and pretty much I worked in 3 different districts. They're all different. Every shift is different. And in the District B3, there's quite frankly now and then a lot of shootings. Young men over drugs, over girls, whatever it is. It's a terrible thing. I witnessed a lot of people being shot. My first one was a young man about 19 years old. I got the call. He was he was on the pavement with his bicycle between his legs, and the bullet wound leaking water and blood. And it was an eye-opener. I had seen some since that first one for my 5 years there. Myself, I was in a shooting situation. It was a call for a person with a gun on New Year's Eve. It was a terrible situation and not a nice memory. The sergeant was shot. The patrolman was shot. He chased me through the house and firing, and I dove into the air, and he put a bullet through my jacket. And when he went outside, he was shot in the shoulder, I believe, and he's now doing a lot of time, basically 40 years for that. Thank God everyone is still alive.
Well, even though the numbers for violent crime are down this year, they are up for shootings. Is there anything different that you'd like to do, significantly different on the police department, if you were the mayor?
If I were the mayor, I believe that we really have to address the guns that are coming in illegally. Everyone talks about trying to curtail, in my opinion, people that have a right to carry guns, as opposed to people that, in my opinion, again, are always going to get access to illegal guns. And so I would try to do my best to have law enforcement on probably a federal and state level help the Boston police, who are working very hard to find out how these young men are getting these weapons, these illegal weapons. A full court press. I also...
How is that different from what Mayor Walsh is doing right now?
I'm not quite sure. He has, from what I've read in the newspapers and seen, witnessed on television, he has a good rapport with the federal government, with this particular president. I would recognize him as the President of the United States. I would recognize that we have an opportunity to get federal funds. There are tax dollars. They're not coming back to Boston because of a different issue, the sanctuary city. I would not have a sanctuary city. We need those federal funds for the Boston Police Department to get the most recent equipment that they could use that they may not be getting. We could use the federal dollars for also, obviously, the fire department, the newest equipment for them, and of course the school system, and some other ideas.
We'll get to that, but I do want to come back to the guns for one more question, because one of the things you say in your campaign literature is that you want to protect the First and the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment is about the right to bear arms. What were you thinking about with that?
I believe I've witnessed an awful lot of movement in America, Boston included, to try to jeopardize the rights in the Second Amendment. I think those people mean right. They're concerned about the safety of the neighborhoods and the people in those neighborhoods. However, I believe there are people that would like my candidacy because I don't think someone who has the right to carry a weapon should be told by legislation that they cannot carry it when the Constitution says that they can. So I believe strongly in that Second Amendment. And also, as you pointed out, the First Amendment, the right to freedom of speech, assembly, etc.
This is BNN News, and we're talking with a candidate for mayor of Boston, Bob Cappucci. Bob, you have an issue with Boston being a sanctuary city, literally or not. I guess that means that any unauthorized immigrant who's apprehended by police or even stopped for, let's say, a traffic violation should be reported, I guess, to federal authorities?
I believe that it's clearly, I think in anyone's mind that a criminal who's illegally in this country and is stopped by the Boston police, I don't think anyone's comfortable with that person, especially someone that's committed a felony. However, everyone that's in this country illegally has broken the law, and we should be contacting ICE for that, the Immigration Customs Agency, Immigration Custom Enforcement, and then let them make the decision what they want to do with that individual.
By the way, when you say we, does that mean strictly the Boston Police Department? Let's say if they go to the city for some kind of social service and it somehow becomes maybe apparent that they don't have legal status, should that city employee also drop the dime?
I'm only concerned with law enforcement at this point. That's a good question. Presently, I'm only concerned with law enforcement. Right now, they're being told not to notify the Immigration Custom Agency, Enforcement Agency, regarding someone that's illegally in this country. I really have a lot of respect for people that are here legally, and I don't think that it's just like in line for a coffee in the morning at Dunkin' Donuts. Nobody appreciates someone that cuts the line. It's wrong. It's also wrong to come into this country illegally. So whether you're cutting the line to get into America or you're cutting the line to get your coffee in the morning, people don't like it. It's wrong. And so I will enforce that. And then again, if I may say, ICE will then make the determination what they want to do with that person. I have no idea. But I know when the marathon bombing occurred, that was one of the problems that they addressed, that the law enforcement agencies, both on a federal, or I should say on a federal, state, and local level, in this case Boston, there was not good communication, and that they said that...
You're losing me here. What did the Tsarnaevs have to do with
what was that?
Being unauthorized immigrants? They came in the country legally.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Well, you brought up the marathon bombing.
No, the issue is in terms of, I'm trying to address the issue of, we decided that there would be good communication between the three levels after that incident. That's what I'm talking about, communication. I want to have that communication again. I want to notify ICE if we have someone in this country that's illegal. And then what they do with that person, whether it's a misdemeanor or a felony, that's on them. And we stopped that. And I'm giving an example that in the marathon bombing, we decided to have good communication. It has nothing to do with the people that did the bombing. I'm talking about communication has to be established again. We said we should have communication, and they said yes, that's correct. So we established from now on the federal law enforcement agencies and the state law enforcement agencies in the city of Boston will communicate. And now we're right back. We're not communicating anymore, and I think that's a hazard.
Of course, you, I'm sure, have heard the argument that if you pursue a policy like this, immigrants in the city, especially immigrants who don't have legal status, if they're victimized by a crime, they're not going to come to the police. Are you prepared to risk that, maybe?
I have a background in law enforcement. Everyone's different. I believe that you should uphold the law, obey the law, and if you haven't done that, as they say, that's on you. I'm not going to do a witch hunt. There'll be no witch hunt. That's not right. I do have compassion, but I do believe in enforcing the law. And there are a lot of people that are upset with people that came here illegally when they know their ancestors came here the right way. And there are people presently that came here the right way. There's so many quotas. and the quotas are being filled, and people look around and they say, well, I had to wait in line, and these people are just sneaking in. They're staying after their visas, it's a question mark in people's minds. I'm a person that has compassion, but I have to try to balance that with the law. And right now, the law is being broken by so many people.
I want to turn to the Boston Public Schools. You know, there are some good things going on and some things that really need to be improved. What would you like to improve?
Well, I would like to have a much more disciplined Boston Public Schools. I have worked with police officers, particularly minority police officers, and those police officers, again, particularly the minority police officers, were able to get a pretty good mark on the civil service test. And I looked at I know their backgrounds. Their backgrounds were not the Boston Public Schools unless they were a veteran. And if they were not a veteran, they probably weren't able to get a high enough mark to become a Boston police officer. So most of the minorities that are Boston police officers either went to the METGO program, or they went to a Catholic school, or another private school, or a charter school. They're disciplined schools. So that's what I want to bring to the Boston Public Schools. The way I would do that is, presently they're making a move to do away with the exam for the exam schools. I would not do that. I would keep that exam, and I would have basically what I would call a 4-tier system. The first tier system would be the students that were getting that would get a high enough mark to enter the exam schools, Boston Latin, Latin Academy, and the John O'Brien. The second tier would be the students that did very well, but maybe not well enough to get into those exam schools. I don't want those, under the Boston school system presently, and when I was on the school committee, they started what they call mainstreaming. Mainstreaming is something that I think is wrong. It's grouping everybody else that doesn't get into those exam schools into the same curriculum. And as a result, the teacher cannot really challenge the student that deserves to be challenged because he has to bring down at a lower level the curriculum. So the second tier would be those students that need to be challenged, but were not able to get into the exam schools. The third tier would be the student that may have some academic problems, but they're not misfits. They just need extra help, and that would be the third tier. I would have teachers and also aides to help those students get up and running and maybe move up to the next tier. The fourth tier would be the students that are out of line. I did 6 years of substitute teaching, and during those years I witnessed, there were 80 elementary schools, 15 junior high, middle schools, and 15 high schools. I did almost every school in Boston. I saw what was happening. They're basically students that are unruly, to say the least. They're disturbing other classrooms. They're walking up and down the corridors. They're banging on doors, and those students, again, need extra help. They're children, but they're out of line, and so the fourth tier would be some kind of a school that would be challenge them in a way that they need to be challenged. Off the record, I kind of think I'm open to discussion, but I'm kind of looking at kind of like a military school. When I was in the police academy, we had PT from 7 to 9 in the morning, something like that. Let them use that energy that they have and then get them into the classroom, and I think we can help them become a good adult later on down society.
We should mention, if people want some more information about your campaign, what's the best way for them to get to see that?
I have 3 opportunities. I have a website, and I have an email address, and I have a 24-hour telephone number.
And the website, anything we should tell them about what it's called or how to find it?
The website is www.Robert Cappucci for Mayor, and that would be the website, and the email is robertmeanycappucci@gmail.com.
And Meany is M-E-A-N-E-Y?
That's a good question. My father thought it was EY when I was born. That was on the certificate, but my aunt, my mother's sister, said there's no E in there, so it's very controversial in the family.
Either way, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you, Chris.
Bob Cappucci, candidate for mayor of Boston. We'll have more news in just a moment.